episode is an experiment. One we hope you'll enjoy, so gather the kids, the dog, Grandma, and lock them in another room. And sit back and enjoy this very special episode.
My optics!
Ho 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 and hello and welcome to a festive episode 12 of AARGH My Optics, a podcast where three adult men discuss, overanalyze and generally take a kids' cartoon and media franchise a little too seriously. The toy and media franchise in question usually being that of Transformers. So for Christmas, it's actually November, but for Christmas, we at AARGH My Optics thought you, our beautiful listeners, deserved a very special present. And so today, we are tackling the big one, the motherlode of Transformers fandom. And that is Transformers the movie!
Hooray!
Yes, today, I, an ancient evil, a planet-chomping, horny-headed bastard known as Orion Ghia, I have summoned you all here for a purpose. And by you, I of course mean our splendid listeners and also my turbo-revving young punk of a hero in waiting, Virtual Dave. Say hello, Dave.
Hello, everyone. Till all are one.
In addition to that magenta prick, we have, back by popular demand, a man who is here to pass judgment on you all. Guilty or innocent, he'll feed you to the Sharkticons anyway. That's just how he rolls. Welcome back, Michael Quintesson.
Oh, hello. Nice to be back on AARGH My Optics. Barna, Grana, Wheat, Nillybomb.
And to you too. So yeah, we're only going to ruddy do Transformers the movie, the 1986 classic animated feature, the first and, as any sane person would say, best Transformers movie ever made. A landmark in Transformers history in so many ways. It's hard to know where to start, really. So let's go with this. Michael, you're the special guest. What has been your experience of this movie? Did you see it when it came out?
I saw it. I mean, I definitely first saw it on VHS. I didn't see it at the cinema, and I think this came out in '86. Am I right?
Yeah, but the VHS came out in '87.
Yeah. So yeah, I know 100%. My parents didn't take me to the cinema to see this movie. I can't remember if I was asking for it or not, but I think maybe if I was, they certainly weren't interested in sitting through it. But I rented it a lot, and I'm like very, very familiar with it. To the point where like I don't know if this movie is good. Like, I love it, but
it is hard to be subjective, isn't it? Well, I'm pretty much the same for me, to be honest. I don't remember it coming out in the cinemas. I actually went to see Care Bears 2, the movie, that year, which, you know, wouldn't have been my first choice, I wouldn't have thought. But yeah, I didn't see it until it came out on video, the Video Gems copy, round my mate Oliver Henshaw's place. And we watched it until, well, the tape didn't snap, but it felt like we watched it until the tape snapped. It was huge for us. Dave, I imagine your experience was quite different.
Yes. Very, very different, actually. I didn't see the movie until, I want to say 2003, maybe 2004.
Wow.
Around that time. Obviously, because of the kickoff of the Unicron trilogy, I was starting to get into Transformers. Mm-hmm. And I think there's one random trip to Tesco's or to some sort of supermarket. We went down the movie aisle and there, behold, was the DVD for Transformers the movie. And little did I know what I was about to stumble into, because this was not the Transformers I knew at the time. But, I'm pretty sure I couldn't find the DVD I'm talking about, but I'm sure on the box it actually says that it's happening in 2005.
Yeah. Was it one of the cheap DVD, like the cheap ones?
It was, yeah. It wasn't the, I don't know what special edition one, they hadn't done that yet.
No.
But at the time I was like, wow, 2005, that hasn't happened yet. That's
It's only a couple of years off.
I know.
There's still time.
Giant robots. So I got the DVD and I watched it religiously for a long time. because growing up I had a double combo TV in my room, so I had a VHS and a DVD player.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just watch that every night. To the point where I went to school and did an actual movie study on Transformers the movie.
Really?
And I got an A for it, so I...
Well, this podcast better be good then. Well, yeah, I mean, I loved it as a kid as well. I mean, I watched it over and over and over. I thought it was brilliant. It was a huge part of what Transformers was to me, because up until that point, I mentioned this on previous podcasts, I loved Transformers, but I read a lot of the comics, didn't see a lot of the TV shows. So this was animated Transformers to me, really. And in a way, I think it's good, really, because it's some of the best animated Transformers, G1 anyway, there is.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely a step up in quality of animation. Compared to the show.
Well, yeah, and they spent considerably more money on it. The budget was around about 5 or 6 million.
Wow.
Which at the time,
it sounds quite high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By comparison, that's about 6 times more than it would cost to make 90 minutes of the regular show.
Wow, it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I guess also for me, it was sort of one of the things you could see, like, because and I think we discussed this last time I was on, but the cartoon was like, you could only watch there was 6 tapes you could get, and then maybe you could sometimes go around someone's house that had Sky, and it was like on, you got lucky and you saw like half an episode, and that was like, sort of my experience. So this was like one of the, and it was, I mean, I think it's better than the cartoon, like, by and large, than the TV cartoon, so I just watched it a lot.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll get onto it later, but it was sort of canon in the comic book, so it kind of worked.
Well, there's a comic book. I think there was a sort of adaptation in the comic.
There was I think it was a 3 or 4 part adaptation made by Marvel Comics, which used an early version of the script.
Yeah. I don't think I've read it.
It wasn't completely bang on, but yeah, it did, and it got released here in the UK as a winter special. And I missed it. I totally missed it. I didn't even know it existed at the time.
Actually, it's one of the few Transformers Marvel comics I have. I have that. Or at least one of them.
Wait, are you talking about the original 80s one? Or are you talking about the redo that happened by IDW?
Not the IDW one, I don't think. I definitely think it's an old one.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go, yeah. That was based on an earlier version. There's a lot of that going on with this movie. People getting early versions of things and getting things wrong. It's why some of the toys are different colours or designed slightly differently and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
My optics!
So, well, let's just talk about what do we like about the movie?
Everything.
Really?
Every moment of that film.
I mean, as an adult, I still love it, but it is still pretty. There's some big cracks. It's quite clunky in places, and there are some serious plot holes. But I still love it, obviously.
Well, I thought. I mean, this isn't sort of. I think it's basically very fun, and it has like I really enjoy the tone of it, and I think the animation is by and large, certainly a higher standard than the cartoon, and it's like quite nice to look at. Like there's some like bad frames in it actually, I think.
Yeah.
But usually it looks pretty good. The pace is absolutely breakneck. I really rewatched it obviously before this, and I really noticed that like even more this time.
It's incredible, really.
Yeah, it really is. Like, it feels like it should be a 2.5 hour film, the amount of stuff they cram into it. But I find it kind of, it doesn't spoil my enjoyment of it, but I think it's probably because I'm so familiar with it. Like, I don't know if you showed it to somebody who'd never seen it before now, they might be like, I don't really know what's happening.
Yeah, it does. It moves along at an incredible pace. Because I mean, I watched it twice, and I rewatched it again this morning, and I just got up a little bit early before my other half, and thought I'll just put it on, and it was finished before she got up. It was that quick.
Yes, it's 85 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. So it really is,
including credits.
Yeah, but yeah, I think it was a really kind of big, epic kind of action drama, space adventure, great music, great animation.
I think just comparing it to the cartoon as well, and we watched some of the Headmasters cartoon last time I was on this, and actually I watched a little bit of one of them today, which is something I suppose we might get onto, but it's just like the kind of the animation is sort of much more fluid, and it's sort of really, really well storyboarded compared to the cartoon. They just spent a lot more time on how it looks.
Yeah.
It's like it's sort of got more imaginative sort of. Well, they're not shots, but they're sort of frames, and it's I think it's quite good looking, and it is as you were saying, like effectively it's sort of an anime movie, and I think this. Is it the same animation studio that did the cartoon, or is it not? Because I was a bit unclear on that.
It is. It's Toei. Toei did the first 2 seasons and a bit of the 3rd season.
Yeah.
There's a bit of a kind of funny story about that in a way. So Toei were employed by, I think it's Marvel Productions or something, and Sunbow or whatever, the people who were making the TV show, to animate it for the first 2 seasons. And during that time, we really should know his name, the director of this movie.
Nelson Shin?
That's it.
It's the word is in my head.
Nelson Shin was like a producer on Transformers and the director of this movie.
Yeah.
And he just started his own animation studio in South Korea called AARGH.
Right.
And funnily enough, they took over animation on Transformers after the movie.
So they changed to a different, but it's all him, kind of, is what we're saying.
Well, the animation, the AARGH are quite well known for being not very good. And
yeah, right.
They took over animation on the final 2 or 3 seasons, pretty much. And there is a marked difference. They're very...
Yeah, it sort of just looks more anime. It's like things like the explosions, like the way the human characters are drawn, and just, I think a lot of just the style of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just think that it's far less incoherent than the TV series is. There's none of those kind of what the fuck leaps of logic that happen all the time in G1.
Yeah. It's fast, but it does kind of add up, like, most of the time.
Yeah.
And when it doesn't, it's sort of fun. And it's just like, I don't know why this is happening, but
yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, I mean, there are little things you can pick out and go, I don't know why that's happening, or how did they know to go there, that kind of thing. But there's nothing where, like, in G1, regularly, people who just do something that has no explanation at all. And you just go, what? Mm-hmm. Why have they just done that? No, there's no reason, no one cares. Move on. There's none of that.
Yeah. I mean, this is a bit of a digression, but a number of years ago, I bought some videos of Thundercats from a charity shop, and this was probably, say, when I was like 23 or something like that. And I was just kind of curious. I was like, I remember thinking this was fantastic when I was a child, and I put this tape on, and I was like, the intro looks great. The intro's really, they obviously made those look nice, and then I got to the actual cartoon, and I was like, oh my god, this is garbage. It's like meandering, directionless, lazy, and like badly drawn.
Yep, yeah, and that.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some standout episodes of Generation 1, but on the whole, quite a lot of it was a bit like that. I'd say the voice acting was pretty good, but otherwise the animation was a bit over the shop. And
it's just, I mean, and I guess this is something we'll get onto as well, but I think, they saw it as a toy ad, and they weren't, like, particular. I think there were people involved in it who kind of had an idea that they were making something for kids and making something that could be, like, popular, but I think, the powers that be didn't care, I don't think.
Yeah.
We never really gave it much budget. They were like, it doesn't matter, let's just get the characters on screen.
There's something I noticed rewatching it, and I don't know whether this happened throughout the first 2 seasons, I'm going to have to check, but Scatman Carruthers, Jazz, his irreverent turn of phrase during this movie is quite funny. Like, he says things like, any Decepticon shenanigans happening in your area?
Oh, yeah.
And then later on he's going, it's like, oh, there's a ginormous, weird-looking planet just showed up in the suburbs of Cybertron. So I was like, it's just a weird-looking planet, and it's eating us.
Yeah, it's like...
It's very Jazz.
I mean, I guess they're probably used to fairly weird stuff happening on a semi-regular basis, but I think even this was a bit much.
Yeah, it's a bit much, yeah. Well, I guess should we talk a bit about Unicron? I mean, I thought he was amazing at the time. I thought it was unbelievable having a kind of transforming planet that would eat other planets.
Yeah, and the whole way the movie starts, like, that's something that really stuck with me. And I think, as a child, it was a little bit scary, I would say. Like, especially that intro. It's a very, like, dark opening.
Yeah, with the Vince DiCola music and everything as well.
Yeah, and then it's sort of used to these robots who seem like some kind of peaceful, groovy robots, and then their planet gets eaten, and that's sort of it. And it's just a kind of, it's a horrifying, it's almost like cosmic horror.
Yeah, and he just floats on to go and eat another planet. It's like, that's that done?
Yeah. It's like, this is a thing now.
I really like that at the beginning because it does that dark opening and then it just kicks right into the theme song. This, this upbeat version of the theme song as well.
Yeah, kind of heavy metal version by Lion, I believe.
Yeah, it's like, don't worry, kids, don't worry. Nothing else terrible is going to happen in this movie.
Yeah, and there's a bit of voiceover, isn't there? There's a little bit of.
Oh, there's two different versions of that. Some.
Oh, there's one with a Star Wars style crawl, isn't there?
Oh yeah, that wasn't on the version I watched.
Yeah, that's the one I'm more familiar with.
But we're going to talk about the similarities to Star Wars later. But that's kind of a superficial one. But that wasn't on every version. It's not on the versions I watched, for example.
That's on a later version, as far as I understand it.
The Star Wars style opening crawl was added to the original UK VHS release by Videogems. Not only did someone feel the kids, and more likely their parents, needed a bit more exposition, they also felt reading it might be a bit too hard, so it was also narrated. This version also includes the narration at the end of the movie, reassuring the weeping children that Optimus Prime would be back. But when it opens, you have that opening, and then you have I noticed it's for the first time, actually, I've noticed this. When it opens, and then you have the opening credits, and it goes through the cast, as it were. You notice that all of the people that are being named are the new characters. There's no Peter Cullen, there's no Frank Welker.
Yeah.
It's just, Leonard Nimoy, people you've probably never heard of, like the guy who plays Blur.
I've not heard of that guy.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, like Robert Stack as Ultra Magnus, Lionel Standler as Cup.
Yeah, Robert Stack, I think, is some very old school Hollywood guy. He's just
so
been in loads
is
of
Lionel
cowboy
Stander
movies.
as well, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then there's John Machita as Blur, who apparently was some kind of minor celebrity at the time, as being. He was well known for being able to talk very fast. Yeah,
and that is. That is Blur's thing. And Blur's a funny one because I certainly think when you get, I remember particularly from the toy range, and I think Blur, Cup, Hot Rod were presented as like a trio, and I think they were sort of the same class of Transformer.
Yeah.
But then in the movie, Blur is hardly really in it. He has about 3 lines, I think.
Yeah, he's in it towards the beginning a bit, and then
he has a bit to do at the start.
Yeah, and he's just kind of in the background for the rest, isn't he? Really.
I think I kind of recently. I rewatched this a couple of years ago, and I was thinking, like, did Blur get killed in the battle and I didn't notice or something? Because he doesn't really seem to be in the movie that much. And then I sort of realised, I was like, no. And then he, like, when they're on the planet of junk and stuff, he's still there in the background, but there's just a drawing, like, he never says anything again.
No, and there's a mysteriously absent Dinobot as well. Snarl is hardly in it at all.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the pace. I don't know if they plan to use that character more and they just had to rip through it too fast.
Yeah, because he is, like I say, he's mentioned in the opening credits, but you don't see much of him, to be honest. Yeah, like, you get the scene with him loading the Dinobots onto the shuttle and so on, and that's about as memorable as he gets.
Yeah.
And he's gone.
It's probably why, isn't it? Because he couldn't get them on the shuttle, so he just got cut out of the movie.
But yeah, it's crazy how, all those kind of the big names of the first 2 seasons are not mentioned at all, and they just go straight for, well, I suppose the guys who are actual famous actors and actresses, as it were.
Yeah. It could even be an actors' union sort of thing or something like that, where it's just like they get top billing. It'll be in the contracts who gets top billing. This is all like plotted out, and they will just all bigger fish than the original voice cast.
Yeah, if Eric Idle and Leonard Nimoy and Judd Nelson are in your movie.
I was actually Judd Nelson. I mean, I think he was a pretty big star
He was.
at this time, and he'd just come off doing The Breakfast Club and St. Elmo's Fire, which are both like I think big movies
Absolutely,
and quite like kind of iconic 80s movies. And then really after this, I don't think he did anything like that well known. I would struggle to think.
I think it might have killed his career.
I mean, I don't know. Did it? Like,
No, I've never looked into it, to be honest. In case you were wondering, no, Transformers the movie did not kill Judd Nelson's career. He went on to star in many movies afterwards, but never quite hit the dizzying heights of his short-lived Brat Pack success and fame again. In recent years, he has reprised his role as Hot Rod in Transformers Animated, Titan's Return, and The Power of the Primes.
Yeah, I think he was just sort of a bit of a flash-in-the-pan phenomenon, Judd Nelson. That's my guess.
He did another movie. It must be years later. Did you ever see the film Steel?
I have seen Steel. Yeah.
Oh, I haven't. He plays the bad guy.
He was a bad guy in Steel. That's the only thing I remember him not
I remember that now, yeah. But he sort of sunk without a trace, I think, kind of after that. Well, not quite without a trace, but he never really sort of made it as the big star that he maybe was being pushed as.
It did happen to quite a few of those kind of Brat Packy people, though, didn't it?
Yeah, I think a lot of them just weren't that good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, or they hit the booze or the drugs a bit too hard.
Oh yeah.
Disappeared for a while.
Rob Lowe. Mm.
Yeah, exactly.
My optics! But I guess all those people weren't credited because they all died in that first
also
season.
True,
They
yeah.
weren't expecting to bring them back.
They were trying to get rid of those characters.
Yeah, they weren't planning to bring them back. So.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose maybe we should talk about that now. I mean,
why not? Yeah,
that was huge, and as far as I know, most kids weren't expecting it.
No.
Yeah, how did it affect you two? Because it was a completely different experience for me.
I guess you already knew about it.
Did you guys know they were dead before you watched the film?
It had gone round the playground several hundred times by the time I actually saw the video.
Wow.
But no, it was shocking that they would kill off, well, not just a bunch of the main characters from the first show, but Optimus Prime himself. It was kind of crazy.
Well, I think when I first saw it, this is kind of how I remember it playing out. This is a long time ago, but, I mean, I think, and actually I checked it this time, I think the first guy to go down is Brawn, and it's 7 minutes into the movie. Mm-hmm. And then, immediately Prowl as well, and the scene of Prowl getting shot is quite horrifying as well, his eyes go on fire, and he's sort of he looks...
Yeah, that whole scene is quite disturbing.
Yeah.
It's the thumbnail for our podcast.
That's what it is.
He's got a kind of orange smoke coming out of his mouth.
Yeah.
He's gone.
I think I was seeing, when I was watching this as a child, I was just like, well, they're robots, so I guess they just get fixed. Nope.
No. Well, Ultra Magnus does.
That's only in the series.
All these characters that we've been watching are now just gone. And I find it it's a really interesting choice. I think when you look at it, especially with hindsight, of sure, I get it. You want to introduce new toys, you want to see, you see this as a toy ad, and you want to sell more toys. But I don't really understand why they wanted to make it so brutal.
Yeah, and apparently there was some pushback from the writers who wrote, because the writer of this movie is Ron Friedman.
Yes. And
he did say that he was strongly against killing Prime, but it was mandated down from Hasbro and so on. They were like, no, we want to clear the boards, bring in the new guys. We've got a brand new line of bigger, better toys that we want to sell to kids. Move these old ones out. That we're going to be discontinuing them in a short while.
His reason for it is really interesting, actually, as well. And I mean, he's the sole. I think he's the sole credited writer on the movie.
Yeah, although there is some contention over that.
I assume that there's loads of input from the studio, but he said specifically that the reason he thought killing Prime was a bad idea was because the writers had gone out of their way to sort of set Prime up as a paternal figure in the show.
Yeah.
So it was going to be very upsetting for kids to see him be killed off. And I think, I guess he's probably right. That's probably why it had such... It's like, why would this have such an impact at the time, just seeing a toy robot being killed off? And it's because, clunky as the show was, I think they probably had some reasonably clever writers. And, also, like, the guy that did all those tech spec things.
Yeah,
the writers went out of their way to make these characters that kids would like, and they sort of knew how to do that. And the Hasbro didn't understand it at all. They didn't understand the product, and they didn't understand why it was popular.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Ron Friedman just said to physically remove Daddy from the family wasn't going to work.
Yes, and then he went on to write, a scene which is quite. You could write him out. You could even kill him off in a much less sort of unpleasant, upsetting way. And yeah. I guess, once it was mandated that he had to write this, he was like, well, this, if you're going to do this, you've got to the movie's got to take it seriously as well.
Yeah. And I think it's really well handled.
Yeah, it's a great scene, I think. And what, and the way he turns grey is sort of, I found that really creepy when I was a kid.
Yeah, it is. It feels final. You see, all the way through Generation 1 and many other TV shows, you see people shot with lasers and that, and they just get up.
Sort of get up, or they put their arm back on or something.
Just physically turning him grey. It's kind of like, nope, that's it.
Yeah, it's like, it's done. And I kind of knew that. I think when I saw it as a kid, I knew that. I was like, yeah, he's done. And I think I think the first time I watched it, I had to ask my mum what the word fatal meant. That was something I think Perceptor says, I fear the wounds are fatal. And I had to ask my mum, I was like, what does fatal mean? I think not quite perhaps believing that this was really happening.
Yeah. No, it was shocking. And I think it worked, the way that they did it anyway.
And I think what it does for the movie after that scene is it kind of really accentuates the sense of peril that they're in. And it's like they have removed Daddy from the family, and now they're on their own, and they've got to work everything out.
Well, the way
Prime's sort of come back.
Go on.
He's come back and saved the day, and that's sort of his job. That's what we see that in the first scene of the movie, the first sort of big scene of the movie, and then now he's gone, and it's like these guys just gonna have to sort of muddle through, and they're being absolutely they're being hunted down really brutally by the Decepticons. They're really in a tight spot, and I think it kind of accentuates that sort of sense of peril and sense of peril they're in.
Their darkest hour.
Yeah. Well, the fact that everyone is just dying left, right, and centre is like previously. Like I said, a Decepticon would shoot you, you'd fall over, you'd get back up again, it'd be fine. No one ever died. And then in the space of the first 20 minutes of this movie, everyone dies, and it's all of a sudden, oh right, so if they get hit by something, they're gonna die. That's it.
Yes.
God knows what happened in the 20 years between end of season 2 and the movie, because no one died. Mm-hmm. They're all still there.
Yeah.
Everything suddenly gets very fatal in the movie. Everyone's weapons get seriously upgraded.
As I say, I find it interesting that no Decepticons die. It's just the Autobots.
Well, no, they did, but they got reformatted.
Well, they didn't die. They just were really...
They were just kind of messed up.
Yeah, I feel like they could have been patched up if Starscream wasn't such a dick,
Yeah, I like that scene in a way, actually, because you've got this sort of, the Optimus Prime scene, he's dying on this sort of, I guess, a robot hospital of some kind, and there's a child crying, they're all being, kind of really nice and respectful to each other, and then you cut to the Decepticons, and they're just having, this, gross fight. It's all, complete little shits. And it's this guy's been their leader for, I guess technically millions of years. And they're just like, nah, you've kind of, your time's done.
You're too heavy.
We're just going to throw you away. It's too much weight. So I wouldn't mind a crack at this myself, to be honest. It's good characterization.
Yeah, and even super loyal Soundwave is like, oh, I could be leader. Why not?
Soundwave sort of tries, but then he doesn't put up too much of a struggle when Starscream chucks him out the door.
No one does.
No.
Which is kind of okay.
No, it's just how it is. They're like, he's weak, he's done, forget it, next.
Yeah, get rid of him.
I think the scene, as much as I like the character of Starscream, and I think he is, he will be missed after this, that's a great scene. I love the scene where Starscream gets gets obliterated.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's a very, I think it makes sense. It all sort of makes sense for his character. Like, he finally gets what he wants, and like, Megatron just comes back and kills him. It's like, yeah, it's a good arc for Starscream overall.
And it's been mirrored over and over again throughout Transformers history since. Starscream will almost get what he wants, and then it'll just all fall to pieces.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the whole coronation scene. I mean, it's an iconic scene for a lot of people. It means that every Starscream toy, well, doesn't come with a cape and a crown, but if it doesn't come with one, everybody wants one.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big thing, and you've got the Constructicons with their little horns.
Yeah, there's a few little animation moments in this movie that are very cartoonish, and I noted that one. And the other one is when Devastator hits Sludge on the back and he has these like googly eyes. It's very strange that I think there's a few other little things like that. It's quite
the Looney Tune eyes and so on. Yeah.
I don't know why that was there, but fine. I don't hate it.
It's fine. Yeah, it's absolutely fine. But yeah, I was going to say, in regards to the writing, Ron Friedman wrote a couple of drafts, and one of them had everything in it that Hasbro wanted, including wiping the slate clean and bringing all new characters in, so on. But it was like a massive incoherent mess. So one of the story editors, a writer and story editor on the movie in the end, called Flint Dill, they submitted an alternative version of the movie called The Secrets of Cybertron, which involved Optimus Prime heading to the centre of Cybertron and finding out that Cybertron is a massive transformer, and then using the Matrix to awaken this massive transformer to fight Unicron.
Oh, yeah.
That makes sense in a way, doesn't it?
That sounds very familiar.
Yeah, but they turned that down. They were like, no, we want to get rid of Optimus Prime. No. According to Flint Dill, aspects of his scripts, The Secret of Cybertron, were worked into the final movie and refers to it as such a Frankenstein of different drafts and ideas and people. However, Friedman had a good agent and had negotiated a deal meaning he got a sole writing credit. Dill claims The Secret of Cybertron script set the Quintessons up as creators of the Transformers, something he'd later revisit when he wrote the Season 3 opening 5-parter, 5 Faces of Darkness. And the planet Cybertron was a weapon created by them also. But not the light god we now know as Primus. It happens in the Marvel Comics as well, in a way. We find out in the Marvel Comics that Cybertron is Primus.
Yes, that's right. That kind of like... I mean, I now wonder if Simon Furman had read that somewhere and knew about it, because it seems very like what they ended up with in the comics.
It is very, very
he doesn't transform, but he's kind of... They find out Cybertron's kind of like almost like a big transformer.
Yeah.
But it doesn't transform, but like he's sort of... It's conscious, and it's this sort of... It's like a kind of space god thing.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to get onto that a little bit later, but yeah, there's some more Unicron shenanigans in the comic book, which involves all that kind of stuff, which is kind of separate to the movie stuff in a way.
Yeah, it sort of follows its own path in the end.
Well, it happens before the movie. It happens in 1990.
Oh, right, of course, yeah. The timeline changes because of all the incredible amount of time travel nonsense in those comics.
Yeah, basically, yeah. So the movie timeline is an alternative timeline to the comic book timeline, an alternative timeline from which characters come back into the comic book timeline. So the movie timeline is where we get the Galvatron and Hot Rod and that from the future. They come back from the future, and then the past is so heavily affected that things skew off in a different direction to where they came from.
Wow.
Yeah, but then some of them are sort of still around in the past, and I can't remember if Galvatron's I think Galvatron's knocking about for ages.
He gets pulled back a couple of times, I think.
Yeah.
I suppose I may as well get into it now, but so in the Marvel Comics, like I said, we had the adaptation, and that was kind of based on an old script, but that was set in 2006, not 2005, because the early version said 2006, not 2005.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is why you then had the storyline Target 2006, written by Simon Furman, where characters from the movie period come back. But then, much later in the run, there's another situation. Well, basically, Unicron turns up early. There is this whole thing called the Matrix Quest, where the Matrix gets kind of tainted with evil.
Yeah.
And then a bunch of pretenders and Micromasters accidentally teleport themselves into the centre of Cybertron, and then they accidentally wake up Primus, and then Primus, being awake, accidentally alerts Unicron to
It's Unicron way before, doesn't it? That it would have happened, and then that sort of something kind of similar happens.
Yeah.
To the end of Transformers the movie, but it's much earlier in the. Yeah, and it is like it's a classic kind of like divided timeline thing. I think you could almost imagine the post Transformers the movie stuff is all sort of going on as well in a different timeline, and then they sort of somehow cross over due to like time travel nonsense.
Wow.
I'm sure you could see a diagram of it somewhere.
Yeah, but essentially it follows a similar plot in that Unicron turns up, tries to eat Cybertron, and he has to be stopped by the Matrix. But in this version, Optimus Prime does it.
It's Prime.
Power Master Prime.
Prime.
Yeah, Power Master Prime.
Yeah.
And he dies in the process, which, by that point, we all got very used to Optimus Prime dying, so it wasn't a problem.
It wasn't even the first time he died in the comics.
No, not at all.
My optics!
There was a time skip between season 2 and the movie.
Yes!
It's basically a 20-year gap between season 2 and the movie, during which time nothing has changed. The same old war is being fought over and over and over. Essentially, they're all still on Earth, fighting each other. I suppose the big difference is that
they built Autobot City. Was that in the cartoon?
But that's a new thing from the movie.
That's the Japanese thing, isn't it? Scramble City.
Well, yeah, but it wasn't. But
that's pre the movie, isn't
yeah,
it?
but it wasn't in the TV series.
Oh no.
Scramble City was an original video animation special released in Japan during season 2 of the Transformers. It introduced the special teams, or Scramble City Combiner teams, and Metroplex, who would later form the core of the Autobot City. This was never officially dubbed in English or shown in the West as part of the cartoon series or otherwise.
So yeah, you have this kind of 20-year gap, and in that time, the Decepticons seem to have completely taken control of Cybertron.
But the balance of power has shifted a little,
Yeah.
but it's sort of the same.
Autobots have built an Autobot City, and that's essentially it.
And the moons.
Cybertron has grown some moons.
Did they build the moons? Is that implied?
As far as we're aware, there weren't any moons previously, and you get lots of wide shots of Cybertron. You never see any moons, but they were there, or maybe they weren't. Maybe they were built.
They were just round the back when you were looking
Exactly,
at it.
yeah.
Oh, I'm happy with that.
That's fine. It doesn't really bother me.
No.
You think they referenced that in Beast Wars because they have the 2 moons?
Maybe. I don't know. Possibly. I mean, there could be more than 2 moons. Just because there's a moon base 2, there could be another. There could be a 3rd moon, 4th moon. Who knows?
It's round the back as well. Yeah.
Actually, I remember in Transformers Cybertron that when Cybertron transforms into Primus, there are 2 moons, and he uses them to beat up Starscream because he's grown into a giant. So,
Okay. Yes, but that's Cybertron. That's Transformers Cybertron, and that's a very Japanese show, and it does some very kind of over the top kind of stuff like that.
well, I suppose Spike's a father now.
That's true.
Yes, that's a big change.
You got kind of a passing of the torch. I mean, in a way, it's the same as kind of bringing in the new characters. They have to bring in a new kid character.
Mm.
What I noticed, because I watched the last 2 episodes of season 2 and the first episode of season 3, just to kind of get an idea of what's either side of it. And like the last 2 episodes of season 2, they're all about the Scramble City Combiners. It's all Superion and
Menasor.
Yeah, Menasor and the Combaticons, all those lot. And then we get to the movie, and the ultimate threat is Devastator. And we don't see any of the other combiners.
No, it's true, we don't. It's quite selective. I mean, maybe they're just off doing, they might be off on a deep undercover mission. Or maybe do they turn up later afterwards? I reckon they probably do, don't
Oh,
they?
you mean in season 3 and so on? Yes, absolutely. Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Well, the actual reason for that is a kind of production reason, because the movie was put into production during season 1 of Generation 1, so they hadn't introduced those characters yet.
Oh.
Wow.
I didn't know that. That's funny.
So they were like, well, we didn't put the aerial bots in because they didn't exist yet.
We didn't know what an aerial bot was.
Yeah, exactly. But it is kind of jarring. I mean, if you're watching the TV show and then you go see the movie and you're like, why are all these old characters here? We've had all those.
It's a bit like this is a sequel to season 1.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I guess is sort of effectively what it is. I mean, maybe that's why they did the time jump as well, because they were just like, we've got to leave room for this second season that we haven't we don't know what it is.
Yeah, exactly. This is the first time since that first 3 episodes of Generation 1 where something actually changes the continuity. Because previously, it was just like, there's a big war on Cybertron, they all leave Cybertron, they all crash land on Earth, they all have a bit of a sleep, they all wake up, and they all have a big fight again on Earth. And then that's the status quo for the entire first 2 seasons, is just that. Occasionally they'd get some new troops come down from Cybertron, but it's the same thing. It's just that over and over. Every episode resets, and it's, what dastardly plan is Megatron up to this week?
Yeah. He's just like Skeletor. He's like Skeletor that turns into a handgun. Like, he's a bad guy who has an evil plan every week.
Yeah. And the things he gets up to are insane. I watched one where he was like working with an oil baron, trying to build a big Griffin robot.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think I've seen that.
Yeah.
So this is the first time they kind of progress the continuity by killing a bunch of characters off and all that kind of stuff. And season 3 starts off exactly where the movie ended.
I think it uses a few shots from the movie, actually, doesn't it?
With a race, isn't it? Or something?
No, there's an Olympics.
Some sort of Olympics, yeah.
There's a bit of a voiceover saying, oh, the movie happened, here's what happened in the movie, and now the Autobots are in charge of Cybertron, and the Decepticons are slumming it on Char, fighting over morsels of Energon. And then Cyclonus and his Nazis turn up, and all do Hail Megatrons. Galvatrons.
Yes.
And then we're whisked away to some other planet where the Autobots are just having a great time hosting a Space Olympics.
Yeah, they are having a Space Olympics. Like, Rodimus is kind of a jerk for some reason, which surprised me. I thought he was supposed to have matured. And he's like, get on with it.
Just comes out and goes, yeah, have a great time, yeah. And then
he's like, rock and roll, almost. It's like he's a totally different character.
And
weird.
And played by a totally different guy as well, so they weren't going to get Judd Nelson in for the TV series. I'm sure he was still looking at a career in movies at that point.
No, I mean, I watched a little bit of this. I didn't watch the whole episode, but something that stood out, I think, really cemented this, is I feel quite sorry for Astro Train. He seems very put upon.
He is, isn't he?
He just seems like he's like kind of there for the ride. He's actually like a super helpful guy. He's just trying to do what he can, and he doesn't get any respect from anyone.
He's just treated like it's just a means of transportation to most people.
Yeah, and there's a bit where he's like, well, this never happened under Megatron, and Cyclonus is like, you mean Galvatron? And he's like, sort of like, yeah, well, that's kind of the same thing, but he's obviously got like a little bee in his bonnet about, so I don't really like the way this is going.
Yeah. Well, I think he's also, in the movie, he's one of the more confusing characters, just because of his kind of crazy mass displacement.
Yeah, it makes Astro Train doesn't make a lot of sense.
And I saw something, I read or saw something about it, which I hadn't really considered. When they're leaving the fight at Autobot City, he turns into the train, and they all kind of run on the back of the train. We get a kind of scale there.
What size is this train?
Yeah, exactly. So they all run on the back of the train. And then the train carries on moving along and transforms into the space shuttle. And it flips over. So everyone must have been thrown upside down in that process. Off it goes into space. But then obviously, maybe it expands as he goes into space. He gets bigger because eventually Devastator can form inside there and everything. So it's all a bit crazy.
Yeah,
a bit Doctor Who.
But then when Starscream chucks Megatron out, it doesn't look that big.
Yeah, it's like it was a small little door to throw him out of. Yeah.
Although to be honest, there's quite a lot of things like that anyway.
In this, yeah, things are just whatever size the script needs them to be. That's it.
Unicron gets bigger and smaller a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes Unicron... I think when Unicron's on Cybertron, he doesn't even seem like that big.
But then when he's eating that first planet, he looks massive.
Yeah.
But then when he's flying out of the sky in that first planet, he looks small. So it's all over the shop.
Yeah, because at one point, isn't he smashing his hand down on Cybertron, and later on he's standing on it? Like,
yeah.
Yeah. The size of Cybertron itself is also quite confusing.
Absolutely.
It looks really... I mean, it looks really small.
It does look like you could drive around it in half an hour.
Yeah. I don't really understand what Cybertron is.
No, it does, because you can see the buildings, and it looks like a kind of floating space village rather than a massive planet.
My optics!
So let's talk about the soundtrack.
Oh, yes.
It's one of the things that makes it, I think. It's very of the time, and it just works fantastically with the aesthetic, animation, and the whole kind of look of everything. Cheesy rock and hair metal really kind of works with the whole thing.
It really cements, like, if you remember a scene and you remember the song attached to the scene, depending on where you're thinking of the song, it also is part of another scene. Like, the songs get reused a lot. Like, Prime rolling down to saying he has to stop Megatron is the same song they use later on for Rodimus Prime Awakening. So it's...
Yeah, but that's thematic, isn't it? Because he's the new Prime.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just like, the music is so well balanced with what you're seeing. It doesn't really matter which song it is or where in the song you are.
And what I noticed watching it this time is the music is constant. It's never quiet.
Yeah.
There's never any point where there isn't some kind of music playing in the background. But it's not annoying like I found it in some things. It kind of works. And the kind of the score, Vince DiCola's score really works really well.
Yes, I like the score actually. The score is pretty good. It's quite atmospheric. I think like the sort of the Unicron music and that kind of stuff is like really
and the Autobot City music and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. I mean, he's I assume he's an established film composer.
Yeah, he's contributed to a number of other film scores, including Rocky IV.
That's right. Yeah,
and some computer video games, including Angry Bird Transformers. So, how the mighty have fallen.
Right, in a way.
But yes, he wasn't like a big deal, but he was definitely...
No, it's well. I think it works really well.
Yeah, and there's some good. There's some I really like. I listened to it the other day, and like there's some stuff on there I quite enjoy listening to. I quite like Spectre General. They're quite good.
Yeah, is there anyone on this soundtrack that was known for that was famous for anything other than this?
Only Weird Al.
Weird Al, of course, and that's a weird. Yeah, I really like. I mean, I like that whole scene actually. It's great. It's really fun, and it's like I like the Junkions are really fun characters. I like the business where they kind of ride. They all turn into motorbikes and they sort of ride each other and then like fall off and swap. It's very fun. Like, it's visually fun.
Yeah.
And that song is like it's not a heavy rock song. It's not really like the rest of the stuff on the soundtrack.
Yeah, but it weirdly works.
Yeah, I think apparently it was meant to be. I think it was Weird Al sort of made it as a Devo parody.
Yeah,
is what I've heard.
I believe it is. Yeah, I believe you're right. Yeah.
I think it's quite an early one for him. Yeah, no, it's I always liked that one.
I didn't know that until today. In fact, I read that Stan Bush originally wrote "You Got the Touch" for the Sylvester Stallone stinker Cobra.
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah.
But it was turned down or something. But yeah, I mean, obviously everyone loves the Stan Bush songs. The 2 Stan Bush songs from it, and the Lion redo of the theme tune, very good, very popular. But it's a great soundtrack.
It is. I remember for the longest time I was looking to buy it, and I couldn't find it anywhere just before like they did some sort of re-release of it.
Really?
Yeah.
I remember it being like available in HMV. Like it wasn't particularly expensive either.
No, I couldn't find it anywhere.
Oh, that's funny.
It was the only. It was a weird period because HMV had gone, and they hadn't released the new one yet. So I was just trickling.
Yeah, maybe there was a little period where it's kind of out of print in a way. But yeah, it's good.
Oh, it's so good. So good. Yeah.
That music was very influential. It's so much so that there's now a band called Cybertronian Spree who perform the music from the movie dressed up as characters from the movie. Like massive cardboard cutout kind of suits.
Yeah, and I think, I've seen some of this, and I think considering what it is they're up to, it's very well done.
It's incredibly well done.
The costumes look really great. Like, they're obviously all very... competent musicians, I'd say.
And they've got a YouTube channel where Shockwave makes cocktails. It's what's not to like?
I think it's weird. The name seems to be a reference to the band Polyphonic Spree.
But they're nothing like them.
But why? Yeah, why? Because, firstly, they're nothing like them. And secondly, it's kind of a band that, like, I kind of imagine that, you sort of had to be there at the time to even know about this. They're not a very well-known band.
I'm pretty sure these guys are American.
They're Canadian.
So
Yes.
Oh.
maybe one of them was just a big Polyphonic Spree fan?
That's the best I can think of. I was wondering, I wonder, is it like Polyphonic Spree were Canadian and, it was a sort of little in-joke? But no, they're from Texas.
Yeah.
Oh.
So weird, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't get that.
But, they're very competent, very good, and they get lots, they seem to get lots of people down to see them. I've seen their shows on YouTube and so on.
I think those convention circuit things can be quite lucrative. Actually, it's a whole industry. I watched a long video about the Brony scene a while ago, which is the adult My Little Pony fan. And it's quite interesting. But like one of the things about it was how there were loads of musical acts and bands that only existed because of this like convention circuit, and they were all making like a good living from it.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I don't know what the deal is with Cybertronic Spree. I mean, I feel like the Brony scene was probably bigger than at its height was huge. Transformers.
There's not very much information about them, to be honest. Cybertronic Spree. They're just there.
Feels like a bit of fun,
but they're quite fun.
It is fun. Yeah, it is. It is definitely fun.
My optics!
The whole thing just feels incredibly 80s, and I think this is the thing that's that's what cements it really as the soundtrack.
Mm-hmm.
And Transformers is like, I mean, you can even see that in the recent-ish Bumblebee movie, making it like an 80s nostalgia thing. It's very like tied to the 80s.
Yeah.
And this is, the whole. I think the whole thing is very 80s actually. Like the tone is quite 80s as well, where it's sort of like quite, it's quite dark and violent, but then it's also got like lots of quips, and like humorous moments, and it's sort of got that. It sort of walks that line of being like a little bit nasty, but not taking itself like incredibly seriously.
Yeah. And apparently, that tone and also the swearing, which is not mentioned yet.
Yes, the swear.
Some of that stuff was deliberate, so that it was a PG rather than a G rating.
But I believe they wanted it to be shown in the evening.
Yeah,
and that was their strategy for that. They wanted teenagers and like young adults to watch it.
Oh.
So if they hadn't have put those things in, it would have been rated G, and therefore it would only be shown during the day. So they wanted it to be shown more often. In a hope to get...
Yeah, maybe that's why they made it violent as well, actually. It makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, partly, yeah. Many people probably thought that Spike saying, oh, shit, was not deliberate, but no, it was totally... it was in the script. It wasn't an accident.
I didn't know about that. I mean, because it wasn't on the VHS version I had.
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't on the copy I had either.
And I think I got a DVD like a number of years ago, some major re-release, and he just said shit. And I was a bit like, what? Did I just hear that?
Well, yeah.
It's like, did I just not notice that as a child, like the 50 times I watched it? But no, it was cut out on the VHS release here. At least.
It was. I mean, there was. I was going to say there's a few different versions because, like I say, as we were saying before, there was one with like the Star Wars style crawl on it. There was a version where they added narration at the end where it says Optimus Prime will return, just to stop people crying. There are a few versions where the swearing was edited out. I believe in America they edited out "open damn it" because that's a bit more of a serious swear word in America than in the UK.
Oh, damn it!
Some mild cusses as well as the shit.
Yeah, and then there's a few other ones where they cut some scenes a bit, but weird ones like they took Hot Rod catching the Matrix out.
Yeah. That's weird.
I don't know. Maybe they thought it was a bit too much foreshadowing. Made it a bit too obvious.
It's obvious. It's very obvious foreshadowing.
Yeah.
Basically, it's like fine. I mean, Hot Rod's. I guess Hot Rod's the main character. I mean, are we happy to say that?
Yeah. Well, yeah. He's. Well, let's get into it. He's the Luke Skywalker of the movie.
Are we going into it? Yeah.
It is. Yeah. It does have a lot of similarities to Star Wars.
I mean, obviously, this is a known thing, and I think that I wrote down a few possible similarities I spotted, but I mean, I think really, Unicron, Death Star, sure, I would be surprised if that wasn't inspired by the Death Star to some degree. It's even got like a big circle on it and stuff like that.
Yeah, he's essentially a transforming Death Star.
I think that the design is great. I love that sort of ring that he's got around him and the pincers and stuff like that. Like it's very weird looking.
Oh yeah. I think it's brilliant. I mean, it reminds me a little bit of something from Ulysses 73 or whatever it's called, the 31. Sorry, Ulysses 31. That he had a spaceship that looked a little bit like Unicron.
Yeah, it's quite an anime style.
But yeah, I mean, Unicron looks fantastic, but he is very much a Death Star kind of wannabe.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. But and I think apart from that, like, there's a few superficial things, but I think it's basically it's a kind of a very standard like hero's journey arc for Hot Rod, and it's like, well, sure, I mean that's Luke Skywalker, but that wasn't like an original idea when George Lucas came up with it. Like, Star Wars is really derivative.
Absolutely.
Famously derivative.
I agree with you. I mean, I think, yeah, there are loads of similarities, but they are mostly superficial. You know, Megatron has a lightsaber at one point, and I guess you could say Springer's a kind of Han Solo kind of character, and RC's Princess Leia, complete with the buns.
Yeah, but he's not in it very much.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I say, it's superficial. It's not. It's certainly not massively part of the plot.
Yeah, there's a few things. There's a bit where Hot Rod is practicing with, I think, what appears to be like a lightsaber against some kind of robot when they're in space travel, and I was like, that's definitely something that happened in Star Wars.
And it
like,
goes,
almost,
time out.
time out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was weird, and that I feel like, they would maybe it feels almost more like a reference than a rip-off. It's like so obvious. And then I've got like, I feel like that final fight between Hot Rod and Galvatron inside Unicron just sort of feels a little bit like tonally like the fight between Luke and Vader in Return of the Jedi, but I mean, it's not that similar.
And it has the mentor talking to him back from the dead kind of thing, you know, like
but I mean, it's all classic stuff, isn't it? It's like, as we say, like Lucas didn't invent any of this.
No,
that's sort of the point. I mean, he was purposefully doing stuff that would be familiar, that audiences would kind of feel they knew already, I suppose. That's like part of the trick that Star Wars played.
Yeah.
But my other hot take is Wheelie the Jar Jar Binks of of Transformers the movie?
Yes. Absolutely. Everyone hates Wheelie. There didn't really seem to be any reason for Wheelie to be in the movie.
No, and it's like, who is Wheelie? Like, he's just sort of there on Quintesson planet.
Just some random Autobot that's got lost.
I think I read somewhere, I've got it in my head, that he's a scout or something, that he's just some guy that's been sent on some deep space mission to just like find out what's going on out there, and he's just been hanging out on Quintesson for a while, like working it out.
And he's gone a bit crazy, and he now speaks in rhyme.
He's actually not in it that much, though.
No.
That was another thing. I think Wheelie has maybe maximum 5 lines in this movie.
He's much more annoying once we get to the rest of the stuff after the movie.
Yeah.
So he hangs around in the cartoon being like that forever, is that what you're saying?
Yes, yeah. And he's in Headmasters quite a lot as well.
Yeah, well, at least he doesn't rhyme in Headmasters, but yeah.
Yeah, it's more that he was introduced in the movie and everyone hates him.
Yeah.
But I mean...
No,
go ahead.
I was just going to say the Dinobots, I think, are, they have quite a prominent role in this.
It's strange, isn't it? Because you'd think they'd be part of the old school they'd be wanting to wipe out or sideline.
Maybe they just hadn't discontinued the toys yet.
I thought they got to carry on. Didn't they not get
I imagine they didn't, but it's weird that they decided that those ones they were going to keep.
Like, Bumblebee and Cliffjumper and Jazz all survive. I don't think the toys were in production after this movie.
No, although...
I think they just kept a few of them around just for the cartoon.
Unfortunately, Jazzman Carruthers... is it Jazzman Carruthers?
Scatman
Carruthers, he died not long after that first movie. Talking of deaths, actually, Orson Welles died very shortly after. It was his last movie.
I only read this recently. I knew it was his last movie, but I think he died in like under a week after recording Unicron or something like that.
He was really poorly when they were recording it, and they had to put like an effect on his voice. They had to put his voice through like a synthesizer to make him sound more menacing because he was quite ill.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, because his voice was weak.
Yeah.
Our good friend the Vidi Printer demonstrates this quite perfectly in our very special introduction to today's podcast. The clip you hear is from an introduction to the Bruce Willis and Sybil Shepherd fronted comedy drama Moonlighting, recorded by Orson Welles around about the same time as his work on Transformers the movie. By a strange coincidence, the Vidi Printer worked his magic on this audio to make him sound like Unicron, totally unsolicited. He just had it laying around, and when he heard that we were making an episode on the movie, he sent it over. What a legend. By further coincidence, this podcast will be released on his birthday, so happy birthday to you, Mr. Video Printer.
I mean, I think it's a great turn, actually, and I really enjoy his delivery in the movie. I like how sarcastic Unicron is. It's fun.
Yeah, because and I think that's a little bit of Orson Welles' own irreverence for the whole thing coming through a little bit.
Yeah, but Unicron just doesn't seem to take anyone very seriously.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think he was because I mean, I can't remember who interviewed him, but he said something along the lines of, "Oh, I'm playing a planet that turns into a robot from a toy line."
Yeah, no, I heard that. Yeah. He knew what he was doing was very silly. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think he was kind of not taking it too seriously, which the right thing to do, really.
I also noticed on this viewing, Galvatron just seems like he doesn't know what's going on at any point in the film. And he's like constantly... It's no wonder that Unicron doesn't really respect him, because he's...
No.
You know, he's sort of like this. I think there's at least twice when he's like, "God, the Matrix is done. I killed that guy." And Unicron's like, "No, you don't understand how this works. It's not that simple. You need to do what I say. Like, not have your own ideas." And that's like their relationship.
No, it's not. They clearly just flew away. Did you not see?
Yes.
Yeah, and like every time, like Unicron wants to speak to Galvatron, like his only way of like paging him is just to create like enormous pain in his mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he does. It's a weird relationship he has with his minions, isn't it? Like where he can just kind of like set their brains on fire and then talks to them.
Yeah, and then Galvatron's like, "You better take me to Unicron. He's clearly not happy about something."
But he can talk to him in his mind, so I don't know.
But yeah, he often just chooses not to bother doing that.
Maybe it's just a one-way thing. I don't know.
Yeah, he seems bewildered.
Was Galactus and Silver Surfer a thing at this?
Well, of course they were. Of course they were. Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Would that have been an inspiration for that whole...
Without a doubt. Galvatron is basically his herald.
Yeah, it feels more that than... I feel like that reference is stronger than Star Wars, if anything.
I mean, what does Galactus do?
Eat planets.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
There's got to be some crossover in that sense. Absolutely. Without a doubt.
I was going to say that, remember how we thought that no one in the Headmaster's cartoon could say Scourge, and they all say Squurge. Well, I thought that Unicron also said Squurge.
He does! He does! I was actually talking about this the other night with some other Transformers collectors, and I was mentioning that in the Headmasters, in Rebirth, they say Squurge at least twice. And then in the movie, Unicron says Squurge. So all I can assume is he's actually called Squurge. And we've been calling him Scourge wrongly for years.
Yep.
We've all been saying it wrong.
Oh, yeah, I was quite surprised by that.
Poor guy.
No, he's misunderstood, yeah.
What do you guys remember about the posters? Because because that's another big reference to Star Wars, some of the way the posters are laid with Hot Rod and RC next to each other in that type of iconic pose.
Yeah, there's kind of three different posters, isn't there? Like there's a US one, a UK one. There are a few different versions, but yeah, I know the one you mean, the one which is kind of like almost a pyramid, which is very similar to the Star Wars poster. Yeah, I mean, it was obviously riffing off that.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't. I mean, I can't really remember the posters. I must have got this video at the video shop like a ton of times. I actually can't remember what the cover looked like.
No, well, there's been a few different covers.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they were. I think they were probably. I mean, I think there is an extent to which they try and like sort of get a bit Star Warsiness into some of the way this comes across. But a lot of people were doing that.
Well, I mean, Star Wars was such a huge influence on everybody at the time.
Yeah, it's true. It's like this thing of like, people do seem to make a bit of a thing of like similarities with Star Wars, but there's, Star Wars is just followed by tons of things that reference it or rip it off or try and cash in on its popularity. And actually, I don't think this is trying to cash in on the popularity of Star Wars in any significant way. Like it's actually. It's trying to cash in on the popularity of Transformers.
Yeah.
Unsuccessfully.
So, I suppose we should probably talk about how the film actually did.
Mm-hmm.
Not that well.
It did badly. It bombed, and it was very unpopular with the critics.
Yeah.
From what I've read, it cost 5 to 6 million to make, and depending on what source you go to, it either only made 2.6 million or 5.8 million.
Wow.
Which means it didn't break even.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine they kind of recouped it all in the long run.
Oh yeah, in the very long run, yeah, on DVD sales and sales of the soundtrack, etc., etc., etc. And it's had a huge impact on the fandom anyway.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, it made less money than the My Little Pony movie that came out the same year.
Well, you were part of that, of course, as well.
Oh no, I went to see Care Bears 2.
Care Bears, sorry, yeah.
Which also made more money.
That's funny, isn't it?
Yeah, it's nuts, isn't it?
I can't imagine they got amazing reviews from serious movie critics either. It's like, I think maybe they sort of pitched it. Maybe they kind of pitched it wrong. Maybe their kind of thing of like, we want adults to watch this just didn't work.
Yeah, I think that might be it, because I'm sure there's not a massive death toll in My Little Pony the movie.
No. I mean, I haven't seen it, but I'd be incredibly surprised to hear that was the case.
I know there's not a massive death toll in Care Bears 2, because I did go to see that. It was quite a fun movie with very little death.
Didn't it affect like all future Hasbro movies? Like,
yep, they stopped.
The G.I. Joe movie, I think.
Yeah, they did a G.I. Joe, and wasn't it meant to be a Gems movie or something? But then that didn't happen.
Possibly, the G.I. Joe movie and the Transformers movie were being made around pretty much concurrently. They were being made at the same time, and as a result of A, how badly Transformers did, and B, how much of a backlash there was against Optimus Prime dying, they changed the movie so that Duke, the main character, didn't die.
Yes.
He was just in a coma for a bit and then got better.
Coma.
They also went straight to video, straight to TV.
Yeah.
They didn't put it in the cinema.
Yeah, I think they got cold feet about being in movies at all after this, because, I mean, I assume they must have lost money at the time.
Yeah, must have done. Absolutely.
We didn't love that.
Well, I think they massively misjudged it. They didn't realise how much these characters meant to people.
Yeah, for sure. But I do wonder if, maybe it kind of gave the franchise more legs in the long run.
Yeah. I mean, it is it's hugely popular with the fandom. In fact, I would say that the movie is what cements what G1 looks like to fans these days.
It feels like the linchpin of the whole thing, actually.
Yeah, and if you look at all the toys that have come out since, they're very much influenced by that stuff. And whenever they make, because there's this one line of Transformers called Transformers Masterpiece. It's one of the longest running Transformers lines, and they're all kind of they're aimed at kind of adult collectors. And when it comes to like reference points for what they should look like, and what kind of accessories they should have, it's always the movie they're going to.
Yeah.
It's, oh, he comes with the little saw blade from the movie. Oh, he comes with the lightsaber from the movie. All that kind of stuff. It's the point. It's what cemented that as the definitive G1. Because previously, people were reading the comics, they were watching the TV show, they were collecting the toys. It was all kind of a mishmash. And I don't think it was until that movie that became like the main thing.
Yeah, I think it sort of has more. It's darker. It's got sort of some vaguely mystical overtones. It kind of like deepens the world, I suppose, in a way that was, I'm sure that like nothing. If there were, it may be that we wouldn't have Transformers at all without this, and it certainly wouldn't be anything like how it is.
Yeah, it added loads of things to the mythology.
Yes.
The Matrix. I mean, the comics did have the creation matrix, but it was just like a computer program.
Really?
That lived inside Prime's head.
So was it in the comics first?
Yeah, but it was called the creation matrix, whereas in the movie it's called the Matrix of Leadership.
That's right, yeah. You're right, and they talk about the creation matrix in the comics. I think that they may even call it that all the way through. Yeah,
it always is the creation matrix, but it suddenly becomes an object rather than just a computer program in Optimus Prime's head.
This was too interesting not to tack on. Like Orion says, the creation matrix was first conceived by Bob Budiansky in the pages of the Marvel comic book as a way to create new Transformers asexually, as at the time Hasbro had a no girls, no gender policy in regard to the brand. The creation matrix was a primal program housed inside the Autobot leader and could be used to bring newly constructed Transformers to life. The matrix was not present in early drafts of Transformers the movie. Instead, upon his death, Prime transferred his life spark to Ultra Magnus as a means to hand over leadership of the Autobots. Later they replaced this idea with a physical object known as the Matrix of Leadership. However, it wasn't until after the movie that the concept was expanded upon, so that the Matrix contained the life force and wisdom of all previous deceased Autobot leaders. Simon Furman promptly pounced on this, assimilating it into the comic books, making the creation matrix a physical object resembling the Matrix of Leadership from the movie. This contained Buddy Ansky's primal program, as well as the life force and wisdom of previous Matrix carriers, and was later revealed to be the essence of the Transformers creator and god, Primus. We hope you all found that as interesting as we did.
The Matrix is a new thing added to the mythology, and that's been revisited hundreds of times. Unicron.
Yeah. Prime always dying in every story.
Yeah, and the idea of Prime being a rank rather than just the name.
Oh, yeah. Is it? Rodimus Prime, yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Previously, Optimus Prime was just his name. It wasn't like, used to be called Optimus, and then but when I got promoted, I became Optimus Prime. It was, previously that was just what his name was. It had nothing to do with his position.
Yeah, so the idea of the primes, I think that comes from this. Unicron pops up constantly after this. And he's hugely important in the comics.
Absolutely. And and the whole kind of creation story of Primus and Unicron being kind of two sides of the same kind of coin, the good god and the bad god.
In the cartoon, Unicron was made by a big monkey for incredibly vague reasons.
Yes, he was. Yeah, the cartoon has a slightly less
mystical kind of reading.
The big monkey Michael Quintesson refers to is Primacron, an allegedly hyper-intelligent scientist who created a bunch of the primitives, aka the Transformers that turn into robotic beasts such as the Dinobots, Skylynx, Trypticon and the Predacons, as well as Unicron, who later rebelled against him. Due to some pretty nonsensical writing, he comes across as a bit of an idiot in the show, and yes, he does look like a monkey.
In this point in the movie, was Metroplex a thing?
Yes.
Because once I watched all of the series, I found it so strange that they decided to transform Autobot City into a battle station instead of Metroplex, which, I mean...
Well, Metroplex is just like the centre of the city, it's not the whole thing.
No, but I mean, he was there, because they talk about his transformation cog got destroyed in the battle, so...
Ah, well, exactly. So maybe it got destroyed really early.
Really? Okay, maybe.
Yeah, it's just not really very clear when Metroplex is around or what he's about.
Because isn't he in the comic?
Well...
Yeah.
The reason that Metroplex is not in the movie is the same reason the Combaticons and the Aerobots are not in the movie. He didn't exist when they wrote the movie.
Yeah.
So, yeah, okay. In season 3, they go, "Oh, we've got to get this new transformation cog back to Metroplex in Autobot City." But when they're making the movie, no Metroplex existed. So, that's why he doesn't transform. That's why a Mega Supreme's not there. You'd think they'd bring out all the big guns, but they don't, because they don't exist yet.
The Dinobots were the big guns at that point then, wasn't it? That's why they...
And Devastator,
Yeah, absolutely. So it kind of explains why the Dinobots played a bigger role than you might have thought they would do, actually.
Yeah. But the depiction of the Dinobots, I find kind of... It's like, they're so dumb.
Yeah, incredibly.
they're like really... They're really portrayed as absolutely pig stupid,
moronic.
Yeah, and I mean it's certainly in the comic. I think Grimlock is quite a nuanced and interesting character.
Yeah, they all are.
That's the comic for you, though.
I mean, they all have. Well, not all of them, but Sludge has some good stuff going on, and Swoop as well.
Yeah, Swoop has some stuff to do in the comic, but they're just portrayed as very very thick and basically kind of comic relief.
And they also have I remember the Dinobots had a scene that I think got cut out, or they kept a bit of it in. You know the scene where they're on the Quintesson planet and they're having an argument about Veronium bologna or cesium salami or whatever?
Yeah,
there is some salami chat.
There was meant to be more of that.
Right.
Because it just goes,
Well-
it just cuts straight into their conversation. There was meant to be a bit before, while they're talking, there's a trap that Slag almost steps in.
Oh, okay.
And there was meant to be more stuff like that in that part, like the Quintessons had traps for them. And they're...
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, isn't it? They're just kind of meandering about, aren't they? We'll just wander around, see if we can find Hot Rod and Cup.
I mean, I thought it was quite weird how there's a bit where, and this is just the pace of the script, I guess, but there's a bit where Grimlock just bust in the door in the Quintesson courtroom. They squish the magistrate, apologise, and then Grimlock just says, "Me Grimlock say you get them now," and the Shocktacons all say you just go along with it, and it's like,
Yep.
I mean, I've no idea what was really going on, but I mean, the Quintessons don't make a lot of sense anyway. I really like them.
No.
I like how weird it is.
They're another thing that
spawned from this.
this movie introduces, and they continue to be an important part of the
Are they
franchise.
still in the franchise now?
Yes.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they were in the comics quite a lot. There was some great stuff in the comics with them, actually, I think.
Yeah. For better or worse, they have been added to the pantheon, and they keep popping up.
Yeah, I like it. It's just sort of like they're in this situation. It's kind of like completely perverse. It's like, why are they doing this? Why are they having these mock trials and then feeding people saying innocent and feeding people to the sharks? It's like,
Yeah.
and you never find out like what's going on, but it's just a slice of weirdness.
Yeah, it's just like, it just happens that on this planet that you've ended up on, there's these
Yeah,
weird
it's like,
guys.
this is what this planet's like. It's like, don't ask why.
Just what
We
happens
just need
here.
to get off this. We just get out of this.
Yeah, and they do. And then they fly to Junkticon for no reason, but hey.
Yeah, it's unclear how they found them, but I mean, maybe there was a homing signal. Who knows? I love that corkscrew spaceship actually as well. That's a great design. I think.
It's a nice design, yeah. And they do reference it a few times in the toys as well. There's been a few references to it. And in the recent cartoon series, they used a similar ship.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think the Quintessons are like, they just seem like kind of massive jerks, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, since then, they've tried to kind of retcon them a bit and kind of make their place in Transformers mythology larger and more important. Like, you know, apparently, in some versions, the Quintessons created the Transformers, in other ones, in other versions, they enslaved them at one point.
Yeah.
So, since then, they've been very much kind of like made into more of a bigger part of it all.
Yeah, I quite like the weirdness of it. The weirdness of that and the junk planet are both like quite welcome in this movie, I think.
Yeah. I do like the other planets. It's good that you get to see some weird shit.
It feels like we're in a whole universe of transforming robots, and like organic beings are really in the minority.
That planet at the beginning, Lithos or Lithos?
Correction. It's Lithone, actually. You may also notice Orion can't say Junkion properly either. Just go with it. Incidentally, if you dig into it, the robots of Lithon are quite interesting. Probably the most interesting aspect that we briefly see in the movie is that they appear to have a more human-like society made up of men, women and children.
That gets destroyed at the beginning? Yeah, you feel like there are loads of planets. You know, the Transformers aren't actually that unique. There's loads of planets with mechanical life forms on.
Yeah, this is somehow normal.
Yeah, in fact, it's more abnormal if you're an organic life form, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Unless you're the battle beasts in that way.
They, of course, the battle beasts. Yep, back to the battle beast. Yeah, they've got from Planet Beast or whatever it's called.
My optics!
I guess actually just another thing, like, is it worth talking about RC a little bit and her place in the whole thing?
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
She sort of sticks out. You know, she's a sort of an odd character, I think, particularly that there was no toy.
Isn't this the first female character? Or is not?
Well, no, because you had Elita 1 in...
Oh, yeah, that was season 2, yeah.
Generation 1.
That's true, yeah.
But yeah, she's the first kind of major character, female character, really. Elita 1 was just Optimus Prime's girlfriend, and you didn't see her much.
Isn't that the reason that episode happened? Because of RC? To get the idea across that there are also female Transformers, so it's not just a...
Well, it happened in season 2, though. So it happened before the movie happened.
But
so...
I'm sure I heard something about in production they were like wait, we've got a girl
Oh,
character.
I see what you mean.
We
That's entirely possible.
need to rush out an episode.
That's possible, actually. I mean, was she just there in the hope that some girls would watch the movie? Is that why she exists?
There is some truth to this. Previous to the production of the movie and creation of RC, there was the aforementioned no girls, no gender policy from Hasbro. According to Ron Friedman, he pushed for the inclusion of female characters in the movie because his daughter loved this stuff, and he thought other girls would too. As a knock-on effect of RC being added to the movie cast, female characters were introduced in the second season of the TV show, which was in production at the same time as the movie. Therefore, Elita 1/Ariel, not originally intended to be the same character, and her band of female freedom fighters appeared in the show before the movie's release.
But yeah, RC is a weird character, and it throws up a lot of kind of confusing stuff about Transformer sexuality and so on.
Well, sure, yeah. There's a story in the comic where I think they've kind of implied that the Autobots have made RC as a kind of reaction to like human like feminism.
Oh yeah.
And they've sort of got it wrong. And it's quite a funny story actually. And there's these people protesting and there's a placard that says like, "Why is it pink?"
Brilliant! I need to look this up.
It's one of those ones that's in black and those black and white ones that are only in the UK comics.
So it's
like
probably a UK only one.
Yeah, it's like a one-off, and I think it's quite funny because it's sort of, it's sort of spearing like that kind of like politics, but also like, why is it pink?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Why is she pink? Why does she look like Princess Leia? Why is she so kind of
Yeah, I thought they were sort of skewering themselves a little bit, and it was quite amusing.
Mm-hmm.
It sort of really highlights like what is the deal with RC?
Who knows? I suppose they felt they wanted to get a female character in there, but like it's weird that that they hadn't done it before or felt the need.
It's because it's a movie.
Yeah.
They just wanted to have like a female in the voice cast, maybe, or something like that. But
yeah, well, a female who went on to be a very important female in Transformers. Susan Blue plays RC, and she went on to be the voice director for Beast Wars.
Oh wow. Okay.
Oh,
so she's responsible. Well, partly responsible for one of the things that people say makes Beast Wars so good, the voice acting.
well, having a good voice cast.
Yeah.
My optics!
So, the character design, that was all done by a guy called Folaro Derry, or Folaro Derry. Yeah, and he was working on it from the beginning, but originally his job was to take some toys and make them into animated characters. But for the movie, he did it the other way. He designed them, and then the toys had to be designed based on his designs.
Oh.
So he designed all the new guys.
And I assume that's the first time they did it that way round, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is why there's a more kind of organic kind of humanoid feel to people like Hot Rod and RC and so on, and they're more rounded and more kind of human-like. They're not blocky. They're not as blocky.
Less blocky, and the vehicle modes are by and large sort of a bit more sci-fi, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's because it's set in the future. It's 2005, so we could imagine that Hot Rod is just what a car looks like in 2005 from the view of 1986.
Mm.
But maybe that's just his Cybertron mode, and he just hasn't bothered to convert over to an Earth car.
Yeah. But yeah, the thing was though, with these designs that this guy created for the movie, he handed them over to the animators, he handed them over to Marvel, he handed them over to the toy designers, and then they all went off and did their own thing and didn't talk to each other. So this is why the toys and the comic book versions of the characters look a lot more like the original designs, whereas the ones in the movie are kind of simplified to work in an animated movie because you've got to draw them over and over again and all that kind of stuff. So that's why there's kind of a discrepancy.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's why you get things like Galvatron being a grey toy and grey in the comic book, but he's purple on screen and things like that. Like
that confused me a lot at the time. I think you also it was both confusing, but also that was just constant. If you were watching cartoons based on Toy Rangers, there'd be stuff like that going on.
Yeah, things didn't necessarily look like they did on screen.
You sort of accepted it as well.
No, I mean it was. I mean, you look at the Wreck-Gar toy. Even at the time, I think people were annoyed that Wreck-Gar couldn't ride around another Wreck-Gar.
Yeah, that would have been very nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, actually, something else I noticed, I think particularly this viewing, was about how, in terms of like how I assume that when they invented like Wreck-Gar, the toy was an Autobot, and I think if you see the toy, he's got an Autobot badge, and the Sharkticons, which was maybe one character, Sharkticon even, was a Decepticon. No. And they just sort of decided to use them as like completely different sort of another race of transforming robots
altogether, yeah.
And also there were lots of them. So like the Sharkticons, there were tons of Sharkticons. But even with like Cyclonus and Scourge, they were there were like several of them.
Yeah,
yeah, and I mean, and whereas the toys, they had their own particular bios. And,
yeah, I feel like Cyclonus in the toys was a guy.
Yeah, and he was in the comic book as well.
Yeah. So I thought that was an odd choice.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? I mean, you still have Cyclonus and Scourge, but then you have their armada and their sweeps, which are just copies of them.
More of them, yeah.
Although the number of them changes massively throughout the movie.
It can just be whatever the movie needs, and Galvatron can pilot Cyclonus, it's all fine.
Yeah, sometimes Galvatron can ride around inside Cyclonus. Sometimes he's about the same size.
Yep, get over it. I'm over it.
Exactly. But yeah, it was interesting that happened. But like I was saying with the comics, they were all kind of handed over these partially finished early version, non-signed off versions of things, and then everything got skewed off in different directions, which actually I would say that wouldn't happen today, but it does.
It does.
So you'd think that Hasbro would have got their shit together by now, but they still make these mistakes. So
I think it just sort of, I mean, they didn't. I guess they didn't take this stuff that seriously. They were just like, no. we just want a way for kids to get familiar with these new toys we're putting out, and that's really the only point of.
Yeah.
So I think that the idea, the fans these days seem to be very invested in whether it looks like it's does in the show or in a certain comic or whatever. But I don't think.
Oh, tell me about it. Tell me about
it. Sensitive topic.
Yeah, I mean, this is one for you guys. I'm not in this world.
It really drives me up the wall. It absolutely drives me up the wall. I've not got a problem with it, but it's become such a thing within the fandom that things must be show accurate, must be screen accurate.
Yeah, like, remember Ratchet, guys? I mean, come on.
Yeah, it's like, yeah. I'm like, that's fine. We could have those, but can we also have the ones that aren't? Everything has to be show accurate these days, to the point of stupidity.
Yeah, I just think they just weren't as bothered, and I don't think the fans were as bothered either, really. It wasn't.
I certainly wasn't.
You just kind of accepted that they wouldn't look exactly the same. I mean, like, Bumblebee's face was very different. That there was all that sort of... there's loads of stuff like that.
My optics!
I suppose, since we're talking of the toys, we should probably talk of the toys that this movie was invented to bring in, because it was basically a commercial for the 1986 toy line.
Yeah. Are they all in it? There's a good question.
Well, not everybody, but a lot. The main ones are like Hot Rod, Blur, Cup, Springer, I think, is one of them as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're pushing the triple changes, I guess, a bit, aren't they? In this?
Yeah. RC, they were planning to do a toy of and never did.
Yes.
Obviously, you've got Galvatron, Cyclonus.
Wheelie got a toy.
Scourge. Sorry?
Wheelie got a toy as well.
Yeah, Wheelie was a...
Wheelie had a toy. Sure. There was a Unicron in development that never happened.
I mean, I think a lot of these toys were pretty good. I think, like, Cup and Hot Rod were good. Cup, Hot Rod and Blur were all, like, nice figures. And I think
Ultra Magnus as well. Ultra Magnus.
But, but Ultra Magnus... I mean, my brother had Ultra Magnus. I think it's one of the crummiest toys that they made in the G1 line. Like, it's a bad toy. I think that, there's sort of some good things about it, but first it was weird that it was Prime again, and it had a little white Prime. That was weird.
Well, unlike the other ones we mentioned, this one was another Diaclone toy.
Yes, exactly. And that was my understanding, and I think recoloured. But
yeah,
if you look at, like, I think firstly it was a bit sort of like brittle and insubstantial, like the trailer bit. And I think this is mostly what I've seen. Like, his blue head that went on top of the little Prime head didn't even have the face coloured in it. It was like, and I remember this. I remember being annoyed, like, as a child.
And it has little eye holes, so you could see the Prime head
Which is
inside.
also kind of weird, because why would you need to see that? Why would you need that to be the case? It's not a Halloween mask.
Well, it's because it's an old toy from an old toy line, where the idea was it was meant to be a powered up version of Convoy, aka Prime.
So in the Diaclone, was that just Prime again, or Convoy as he would have been called?
Yeah,
it was Prime in a new suit of armor.
Yeah, but like I think I remember particularly that like I think in the catalogue he had a silver face, which is what he has in the cartoon as well. But like it was just they just hadn't bothered. They hadn't bothered to do any colouring on the toy, and I think the Prime thing was completely white as well. It had no colouring on it, and it was just so incredibly lazy.
Michael is correct. Although the first run of Ultra Magnus did have a painted face, both on his smaller and larger robot modes, a running change was made whilst he was on the shelves. The later version featured unpainted faces. That's not all. The cheap bastards at Hasbro replaced his rubber tyres with plastic ones, the originally chromed fuel tanks on the cab were left white, and removed the clear yellow plastic used for his cab windows, leaving just holes instead. This is also the version Orion Ghia remembers from his childhood.
It was very plain.
Yeah.
And even by G1 standards, quite a brick. Like it had virtually no articulation. It had no leg articulation at all. It was just the arms could move. And I suppose you could turn the head.
The arms were good, but I think it's a bad toy. I don't like Ultra Magnus.
No, there's been much better versions of him since.
Yeah, I quite like Ultra Magnus. I mean, I think he's quite a good design actually.
Yeah, it looks good.
Like I like him in the movie.
Oh, that's one thing. Did you know that in the movie, this was a scene that was cut from the original movie? They were originally meant to the sweeps and the Armada were going to lasso him with like laser lassos and pull him apart.
I heard that. Savage.
And they removed it because they thought it was a bit too brutal.
I heard there was another scene that they didn't make where it was going to be like a kind of last charge of the Autobots, and they were going to show you like pretty much absolutely every character from the cartoon was going to be gunned down in like one scene. And they didn't film that either. Or they didn't make it. I think they storyboarded it. But I mean, I
think you're right. I think there was meant to be some really violent stuff. I think I read about this, and apparently there's no actual proof that this was a thing, but it's a massive rumor that's been going on for a very long time.
People have mentioned it. I mean, you see like Wheeljack is just dead on the floor.
Mm. Yeah, they didn't even need to have him on the floor. They could have just.
That's the only point he's in the movie.
No, they were just dragging another dead body.
Brutal.
Yeah. And then again, it's the only point during the entire movie when anyone shows any remorse for anyone who's died, apart from obviously Optimus Prime.
Yeah.
I think RC has a bit of a moment, and then let's get on with this then. Transform Autobot City.
Springer's like, come and help me move this missile launcher. Stop looking at them.
Why is everything? This is another. Why is everything so manual?
Yeah, I really like that, actually. I think I wrote this down in my notes. I was like, the manual transformation of Autobot City is like a fantastic sequence that's really, really fun. Mm-hmm. And it's like, sure, it doesn't really make sense, but like, it's a nice little sequence, and
it gives everybody something to do.
Yeah.
That's for sure. But it's just when you stop and think about it, you're like, well, why is this all manual?
Why don't you just have one button that does this? but like, because it's cool, I guess.
Yeah, and it works. And that whole scene when they're pushing that launcher and firing it and so on, that's really good. And you get a bit of character moment between like the guys doing it.
It gives the characters something to do. You get a bit of interplay between RC and Hot
Exactly.
Rods.
It's much better than everyone standing around just spouting exposition at each other in a kind of headmastery kind of way, and then they have a fight.
Although I put in my notes that they miss with the missile launcher though after all that effort.
I thought they hit Devastator, but he just didn't fall over because he's too hard.
Yeah,
I think they did hit him at least once. But yeah, I mean, also the other thing about the toys was that this was around about the time that Hasbro took over as lead designers of the line, whereas previously Takara had been doing it.
Yeah,
which is why things go very, very off the rails after this point, and you get Pretenders and Action Masters and all sorts of crazy stuff. That they're kind of less intricate and more kind of like, well, this doesn't really transform. It's just got a guy inside it, or
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess I suppose they were trying to make new things, and they were like they sort of these days. It's like it feels like these kind of toy lines just recycle. They'll just sort of cycle through, and then there'll just be like a new version of the characters you knew. Mm-hmm. I quite like that about Hasbro's approach, where they're just like, nope, it's like you're going to have a new set of characters every year.
I absolutely wish they still did it.
Yeah.
I honestly do. Because as a toy line exists right now, it is just that. It is just, right, who are we redoing today? Which G1 character hasn't been updated for the last 6 months?
Yeah, like, how many versions of Prime are there in G1? I think it's 3.
Hundreds.
Well, no, but if you take just G1 up to...
Oh, just G1?
Yeah.
3?
I think it's 3. Yeah, it's Original Prime, Power Master Prime, and Action Master Prime, I think.
Yep. Yeah, that's it, pretty much.
And like Action Masters is like a lap of honor anyway, where they just like do little figures of all the characters you know.
Yeah, Action Masters was kind of the point where they first started that let's redo things thing.
Yeah.
I suppose maybe you could say the classic Pretenders as well, because you had a new Bumblebee, a new Jazz, and a new
that's funny.
Grimlock.
Yeah, quite bad. I think they're quite bad toys. Those ones. None of those were satisfying depictions of those characters. Bumblebee was Goldbug for a while, which is a thing.
Yeah.
He was, yeah. At least that was a new toy, though. That wasn't... It turned into a VW.
Throttlebots.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, as we were just alluding to, this movie's had a huge effect on the toys since. We've seen these characters done over and over and over again, to the point that now, because it is now 35 years since that movie came out. In fact, this podcast is going to go out in December, it was 35 years ago to this month that it came out.
December release.
Yeah, in the UK. It was released a few months earlier in the US. In the UK, it came out in December 1986. So now it's 35 years later. There's a toy line, Transformers toy line called the Studio Series. And for a long time, it's been about making movie-accurate versions of the Michael Bay movie stuff.
Ooh.
But this year... Exactly. But this year, they started a subline called Studio Series 86, which is recreations of all those characters from the movie, from the Transformers the movie, which are pretty nice. I know that Dave's got quite a few of them.
Yeah, I've got some of them. Yeah. I think they're pretty good for that aesthetic for that movie. Sort of a weird, how they do inspire G1 figures and stuff like that, which are still kind of different. This is that movie, and that's what they're really aiming for.
Yeah, I mean, they're still a little bit greebly in places, but they are.
Not for the most part. Yeah,
they are very, very inspired by the movie. I mean, I saw Snarl for the first. Is it Slag? They brought Slag out again. What's he called though?
Slag.
Dave, what is Slag's name though on the toy?
Slug.
Yeah.
Very creative.
They've realised that Slag's not going to go down so well everywhere.
Oh really? They can't call him Slag.
Yeah.
I mean, I assume it was as in slag heap.
That is what it's for. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think the Americans had that term at all.
No, it's not an insult.
It's only since they got Jason Statham that they know about it.
My optics!
What about Ultra Magnus coming back to life very quickly after he died?
Well, the Jonticons can just fix anything, which makes you wonder why they can't just fix everybody else that died.
Yes, it does.
But, again, going back to that deleted scene, instead of being blown up with a cannon...
Yeah, that's true.
Originally, in the deleted scene, Ultra Magnus was pulled to pieces, so they just need to put the pieces back together.
It would make more sense.
Yeah.
It would make more sense if that was actually what had happened, but I guess they decided it was too unpleasant.
Yeah, they did.
Even for this movie.
So I suppose Ultra Magnus comes back to life because he was really only pulled to pieces.
Right, okay.
But that's another thing. He tries to unleash the Matrix and fails because he doesn't put life. Well, I think Michael, you mentioned this.
Yeah, here's something that occurred to me. It's like, was Hot Rod I think maybe he's actually Rodimus by this point already. But was he basically only able to open the Matrix because he put his fingers in those little holes? Because no one else ever tried that.
Yeah, it's quite possible. There's a release mechanism.
Maybe that's what the touch is, and that's what makes you the chosen one. It's just like a little bit of lateral thinking, and be like, this has got little holes in it, or like maybe his fingers fit. Like, I guess what is I suppose what is the mythology here? Apparently, Stan Bush had some kind of philosophy of the touch.
All right, did he?
I think he was like, it's a kind of a life force, or something that makes you special.
Oh.
Yeah, but considering you wrote it for a different movie, we can take that with a pinch of salt.
I don't know if there wasn't. I don't think in the movie Cobra there was a scene where Sylvester Stallone opened a kind of a crystal and destroyed a robot eating planet.
Exactly. So he might just be talking absolute bollocks.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably a lot of hindsight in this. I suppose there is this sort of hero's journey for Hot Rod. He's flagged early on as potentially a kind of a chosen one. It's all very unclear, but I guess the franchise explores this in depth later on.
Yeah, I think he gets a bit shafted. I think he gets a bit shafted in a way because everybody is really upset about Optimus Prime dying. So after that, they kind of go, oh well, we're gonna have to bring Prime back anyway, so Hot Rod can't really be too important. And also, they do that bit at the beginning, which where he basically causes Optimus Prime to be killed.
Yeah, it's sort of his fault, actually, which is not really. Guess because they whip through everything so much, there's very little introspection about that.
Time to think about it.
And I think the original idea was for it to be his redemption would be to destroy Unicron, but everyone just blames him for Optimus Prime's death.
But then gets over it very quickly as well.
Yeah, but I mean the fans. The fans hate him for this.
Oh. I suppose that's true. Yeah. How quickly do they bring back Prime in the US cartoons?
Very quickly.
Pretty quick.
And they kill him. They kill him again, though. He comes back for like an episode or two, and they kill him again, and then bring him back later.
Why not? Yeah, well, that's. I guess that's. I mean, I think I've said before, but I think that becomes almost Prime's character after.
Yeah.
Through the whole thing, really. After this is like Prime dies. That's what he does.
I actually want to talk about that episode because it's they visit. I think Daniel wants to find out what Ultra Magnus's birthday is, and for some reason they have to go to a memorial or some sort of cemetery for everyone who died in the movie. So that's when you see Prime again, because they go and visit the gravesides of all the Transformers who died in the movie, and Prime comes back by some sort of Quintesson shenanigans, and
he comes back as a zombie.
As a zombie or something, yeah.
I heard there was Zombie Prime.
And he gets blown up.
Dave's Swiss cheese-like memory of Transformers lore is becoming a running theme of this podcast. What he is remembering are two separate and completely unrelated episodes of the Transformers Season 3, Dark Awakenings and Surprise Party, and he's mashing them together into a narrative that is admittedly no more confusing than what actually happened. What happened regarding Optimus Prime's first resurrection as a sort of zombie does involve the Quintessons, but it has naught to do with Ultra Magnus's birthday.
I mean, in the comics, I think Rodimus is like a big character in the comics.
He is, yeah.
He's quite important.
But he's also got a lot of he struggles existentially with his role as leader. He's not a comfortable leader.
So does Prime, though, actually, doesn't he?
Oh yeah, Prime does constantly. He's constantly hand-wringing about what he's done to everybody.
Yeah.
Which is only fair, really, to be honest.
I mean, I mean, we're sort of going. This is quite a big digression now, but fine. I mean, I think the other major time I'm aware of that Prime dies is in the comics, and it's quite a strange situation where he goes and fights Megatron in a video game.
Yeah.
They sort of agree to this so he doesn't harm anyone innocent, and then he accidentally kills these little goblins that are in the video game.
But he's been tricked though, hasn't he, by Megatron somehow?
Yeah. But then at the end he wins the game. Yeah. And then he says, because I killed these little, pixelated goblins, I want you to blow me up. And it's stupid. I mean, it's it doesn't really make any sense. Because it's the whole point of...
Luckily, though, the guy has copied his brain onto a floppy disk.
Onto a 3.5-inch floppy disk. Which is then put in a filing cabinet for a number of years, I think.
And just left there for a while, and then they bring him back.
So, I mean, I thought it was odd. I mean, I get it. It's he's I've still failed, but I mean, they were just little computer guys. They didn't kill anyone. And also, I mean, shouldn't he stick around and he's now just letting Megatron go to cause hassle?
Yeah, he could just step down.
He could have done it. He could have done a lot of things, but I think like blow me up is extreme. Voluntarily.
Yeah, absolutely.
I always found it odd. I was like, I don't know why. I mean, they could have killed Prime in a bunch of ways. And I don't really know why they went for this.
Well, I think part of the story was that Megatron insisted that everyone have like a bomb put in their head, and then the victor of this computer game would blow up the ones that lost.
Yeah, that is something.
And then
like
when
that.
they came out of it, Optimus Prime went, "Well, I know I won, but I won by cheating or something, or I hurt somebody. So in that case, I must die."
Yeah, it was silly. I don't really like that story that much.
My optics!
Did you want to mention anything about the different colour of Hot Rod, since that's a big thing with the fans, is which colour Hot Rod is?
Oh,
that's a good point, actually. Yeah. So it is a big deal amongst some fans that all the Hot Rod toys were red, whereas he's pink in the movie.
And isn't he different colours and different versions of the movie?
I've never noticed that in my life. I thought it was just like shaded a bit different for the movie because, just because it's on the movie. I don't know.
No, what it is that the theatrical version, the colour saturation is different, and that's the one that a lot of people have seen. That's the one where he looks pink. But the version that came out on DVD, especially the one that we all saw, or especially the one that I saw as a kid, or on VHS, the saturation was turned way up. So Hot Rod looks red. So I always thought he was red.
I think Hot Rod is red.
But he is actually quite a kind of pink, kind of magenta colour. And there apparently, originally, the very first prototypes of Hot Rod were pink. And then they switched to a red colour for the actual production toy. So there's a small but vocal section of the fandom that really want a pink Hot Rod, which is fine. It doesn't bother me at all. I don't need it to be pink.
It's like we want one that was in line with the level of saturation used in the version of the movie that we saw as kids. That's the take.
It's essentially that, yeah. Or rather, the feeling is that the saturated version is the incorrect version, and that's the one they went with for the colouring of the toy.
I think Hot Rod's red.
Yeah, me too. I'm afraid to say.
That's my final. that's my take.
Yeah, Hot Rod is. I mean, it makes sense. He's called Hot Rod. He's got flames on the bonnet. He should be red.
Yeah.
Well, why would he be pink?
I guess as a child of G1, I just was used to things not being exactly the same colour or looking the same. That was just completely normal.
Exactly.
Water off a duck's
And I
back.
thought the toy looked better in red. Yeah. But what were you going to say, Dave?
I was going to say, I really like the, thinking about that as the term as like the character designs. I really like the choice of like, almost, well not all of them, but most of the new main characters have like 3 shades of the same colour.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, they're kind of, they're not kind of, there's not so much contrast, is there?
Yeah, like with the Junkion.
Yeah, like Blur's all like grey blues.
Yeah, Blur, Springer. They're all just kind of just.
That sort of characterises that wave in terms of colour.
Oh, I know why Dave likes it.
Why?
It's very Power Rangers.
It is.
Oh.
You've got the green one, you've got the red one, you've got the pink one.
Oh, I guess I need that. That's a new shelf. That's an idea for a photo now. That's great. I love that.
My optics!
What we like to do when we review something is mark the movie or whatever we're watching on a scale of wheelie to something good. So your favourite characters in this movie, which is going to be confusing now because we're going to have to use characters from this movie to rate this movie. So since you brought it up, Dave, would you like to go first? What character would you choose best to describe Transformers the movie?
I was really toss up between Unicron and Galvatron because I think they're the standout ones for me for this film. But I think I went with Unicron's head at the end,
Nice.
just because I feel like this movie is just always around us now. Like it's part of the fandom. It's always circling us in some shape or form. We hear the songs, We think of this
Orbiting
movie.
us.
Yeah, it's just orbiting us. I think it's so like a moon. Like it's small, but it's very significant to the fandom. It's quite.
Sure.
I mean, any real fan would agree that this is the best movie, only movie for Transformers. You know, and
it's certainly the best movie that's been made about Transformers. I would say.
it's great. And I think that you ask anyone from that time period or anyone who's actually seen it, they've got some sort of connection to it.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I may have sprung this on you, Michael, but do you have any ideas?
Yeah, okay. I've got. Well, if I thought this the movie was a character in the movie, it's kind of Rodimus actually, because this is if Transformers is on a hero's journey, this is the point where it grows up and takes charge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. He's the central character, and it is very much the.
Well, he is the main character as well. Yeah,
it changes the status quo quite a lot. So.
Yeah.
I know, he's a good one. I mean, the toy was good, actually, of Rodimus, I think.
I loved Hot Rod. Rodimus was... Space Winnebago is a bit...
He had thin unarticulated legs.
He did, yeah. They've made better ones of him since, but yeah, he was a very... Yeah, Hot Rod was nice, though. I liked Hot Rod.
Good toy.
Yeah.
Very solid.
But, okay, so my choice is also Unicron, but for different reasons. And it's all of Unicron, not just his head. But, I mean, the reason is that, just like Unicron, this movie is big, epic, over the top, very 80s, and just a little bit silly. And also, I mean, it's just an amazing addition to the Transformers mythology, Unicron.
Yeah, yeah.
A proper scary big bad.
Yeah. Unicron's a scary idea.
Yeah, he is, yeah. So, there you go, that's my choice.
My optics!
And that, my friends, is a podcast. One of the big tentpole subjects of the Transformers franchise ticked off the list. What an achievement. What did you think, dear listeners? Did we miss anything? Did we talk a lot of sense, or was it a load of absolute twaddle? Let us know on social media. You can contact us on Facebook, where there is an AARGH My Optics page. I'm on there as Orion Ghia, and I'm on Twitter and Instagram as @GearOrion and Orion_Ghia, respectively. Virtual Dave is an Instagram-only kind of guy, so where can they find you?
Virtual Dave 26 on Instagram.
Thank you. And talking of thank yous, a round of applause for our returning guest and good friend of the podcast, Michael Quintesson. Thanks for joining us again.
Woohoo!
Oh, well, no, it was a pleasure. Thank you again.
No, great. I hope you enjoyed it. So, if you enjoyed this as much as Dave, Michael and myself, why not express that enjoyment by liking, subscribing, sharing and so on. We really appreciate it. Our next episode will be a very special one. Not only will it be the first of 2022, but it will also be the first one where Dave and I are recording in the same room.
Yay!
Yeah, Dave will be travelling down to my abode to share a mulled wine, exchange prezzies and reveal our top of the box rundown of our favourite action figures of 2021. What were our favourite figures? You'll only find out if you join us next time on
AARGH My Optics!